is Randa Jarrar. I'm a fiction writer, nonfiction writer, and our talk today, or kind of our focus, is going to be on being a misfit, kind of. So one of the things that interests me about fiction is this idea that fiction is populated by outsiders and by misfits. So just going to start my talk with an image. I like to draw. I'm not very good at it, but I like to think that I am. Yeah, it is a house. So when I was growing up, I went to these sort of strict British schools, and I grew up in the Middle East. I'm Arab American, and I grew up in a landscape that was just sort of empty, desert-ish, with some kind of urban thing going on, and also the Arabian Gulf. So I had these kind of different landscapes going on when I was growing up. But I went to British schools, and so most of the stuff that I was reading, like Enid Blyton and all these like kind of like cute stories and novels and sort of like children's books, were about people that weren't like me. So that for a long time, this is how I drew a house, because in my imagination, this is what a house should look like. And so the first few years that I was writing, and I think most of us here can trace back our writing histories to when we were children or when we were, just starting out writing. And you know what they say about artists is like, everybody starts out drawing and everybody starts out writing. And artists and writers and musicians are people who continue to do that, right, into adulthood and take on their craft seriously and keep doing it. And that's what sets us apart, I guess, from everyone else who gave up doing it and like are in tech. I don't know. So this is how I drew a house, and this is how I thought of what my writing should be. Like the stuff that I was reading, and I should write about these people, and that's what writing is. And then at some point, I had to like really think about like what a house was to me and what my home was. And it was basically like this is a fucked up roof, like this is just like dirt. This is like this crazy woman Juanita who would like hang out outside her window and like smoke cigarettes. This is supposed to be a cigarette. And there were some pigeons up here, and there was like a bunch of litter here, probably from Juanita. And like sometimes like people would like park their cars, and sometimes they would blare music. And so my mom would make me go up to the roof when I had trombone. My mom was a musician, and she was like really, really sort of invested in her art, and so I sucked at her art. I was like, like everyone else in band, like bad trombone. So she would make me go up to the roof and like practice my trombone up there and hang out with the pigeons up there and like get away from Juanita, I guess. And so at some point in college, when I was taking fiction writing classes, I had to stop thinking of like this image of what my childhood was and what sort of like, what I was supposed to write about, and got honest with myself about like what really my past was and who the people of my past were. Okay. So that's something that I feel like every writer has to come to terms with. Is what is your material and what is it that you want to write about and who is it that you want to write about? One of my favorite essays on fiction is by Frank O'Connor. And if you guys are interested in a PDF copy of it, I'll give you my email after this workshop, and I will send you a PDF copy of it. And it's the introduction to his book, The Lonely Voice. So you can read the whole book. It's a tiny bit dated, but the introduction is gold. Frank O'Connor was an Irish short story writer who was fabulous. And in his opinion, the short story never had a hero. So this is kind of a fancy way of saying that if there are heroes of the short story, they're outcasts. And when you think outcast, you might want to like your brain might force you to think like someone in stirrups or like chaps with like guns. But you don't have to think of it that way. You can just think of Manita. You can just think of people that you see every day, or people that were involved in your past that were on the outcast or on the fringes of the society that you lived in. And if you think of good short stories, most of them are populated by outcasts or people who are on the fringes of the society that the writer is writing about. So let's take the grandpa of the short story, Gogol. So in the overcoat, you've got basically a human copy machine, right? A Kekovich. His job, the whole short story, I don't know if most of you have read it. If you haven't, you have to read it. Is basically to be a human Xerox machine. That's his job, and he loves it. He doesn't care. All he wants to do is like go to work, go home, continue doing his copying, and go to sleep. Like have like a tiny bit of wine, and wake up and do it all over again. Except in this short story, because something has to happen. Because in every good short story, what's happening is like this is the day that something different happens, right? Like in Little Red Riding Hood. We don't get the days that Little Red Riding Hood is just like going to visit her grandma and nothing happens, because that shit's boring. We get the day that Little Red Riding Hood goes and like the wolf shows up and all that shit happens, and then you have like people like Angela Carter doing spin-offs on that. There's just amazing stuff that can come from a simple story like that. So in the overcoat, his overcoat falls to pieces, and it's really fucking cold. He lives in Russia somewhere, Petersburg, I think, Petersburg, and his tailor refuses to make him a new coat. He's gonna have to figure out a way to get a new coat. He finally does it, but when he does it, his life changes. He like starts to go for walks. He starts to like see people hanging out in bars, and like he loves seeing the lights in the boulevard, and like he starts to see horse carriages. He just starts to see his entire world differently, right? So he goes from being this weirdo copy clerk to being someone who's part of the world that he's from. That wouldn't make a good short story. So of course what ends up happening is he gets robbed, someone takes his coat. He goes to the cops to tell them, the cops tell him, no, go away, you're poor, we don't care about people like you. He goes to see an important person, the important person yells at him so much that it makes him feel ashamed so much that he goes home and dies. After he dies, he becomes a ghost and starts to mess with people in St. Petersburg by stealing their coats. This is a story that was published in the mid-1800s. Okay, so this is like the kind of short story that does everything. You've got the outcast, you've got like a cool object that the outcast has to get. He loses the object. He tries to speak to power. Power rejects him. The only resort he has now is to become a ghost and to like get back whatever dignity he lost. So if we read the story now, it's sort of like, oh, it's not that special because everybody has ripped off this story since then. But I suggest that you read it. So we can talk about like other people who write stories and like test out Frank O'Connor's theory. Okay, so are most people in fiction, or is fiction really people by outcasts? So let's talk about like another old dude, Maupassant. Maupassant writes about, let's see, hookers. Who else can we do? Turgenev, Russian guy. He wrote about serfs. And then more recently, we can talk about someone like Mary Gateskill. Mary Gateskill writes about, in her short stories, I would say damaged women. You look at someone like Junot Diaz. I would say Junot Diaz's outcast character is the playa. Like not just the playa from the DR. Jim Paladieri, the immigrant. Maybe not just the immigrant in New England who like, I don't know, can't have babies or, so it's not just like the immigrant, but the immigrant who also has an additional thing that makes them an outcast. Okay. So there's this theory that Stanley Elgin, it's not a theory, it's just this thing that this idea that he has, and the idea is that the only book worth rewriting, the only story worth retelling is the story of the book of Job. I grew up without like any of these stories, so when I hear a reference like this, I have to like really look into it. So when I was in college, and I first found out about this, I was like, what is the, believe it or not, what is the book of Job? I had to go look into it. So, okay, damn, really? That's crazy. And then when I read Frank O'Connor, I realized, yeah, Job was an outcast. Job had to live on the fringes of society. And it's also this idea that the loser is an interesting character. So writers like Sam Lipsyte and Thomas Bernhard. Thomas Bernhard actually wrote a novel called The Loser. So why am I like talking about all this? I think one of the toughest things to do when you sit down to write fiction is to figure out who you're going to write about. It's easy to be like, oh, I want this fucked up situation to happen where like someone's cheating on someone, or I want to write a coming of age novel, or I want to do this. But at the end of the day, you have to do all of this work. You have to portray all of the struggle that you want to write about through characters. And to me, like the only good stories that exist are stories where characters are being developed and characters are growing. I don't really care that much about plot. I don't really care that much about, a little bit of it is nice, but if I wanted that, I would watch television, right? I want my heart to break. Sometimes my heart breaks when I watch Ingmar Bergman or maybe like a really good Spike Lee movie. Sometimes my heart will break then. Otherwise, if I want my heart to be fucking crushed, I want to read literature and I want characters to crush my heart. I'm reading Proust right now. I'm reading Remembrance of Time Past for the first time since I was a teenager when I had to read it in college, which is a total mistake. Nobody should have to read that book in college. But reading Remembrance of Time Past now, I'm testing out the Frank O'Connor theory. And the narrator of Remembrance of Things Past is kind of an outcast in his own family. He doesn't talk about it, but he's gay. He's living in France in the 1800s. And what he's doing is he's telling us a story about his great aunts, his grandma, his mom, and he's doing it from this sort of position of an outcast in his own family. And so it's kind of interesting to think about your own self as a character, and how the first community that you were a part of and that you might have been an outcast in was your own family. And even if you weren't an outcast in your own family, every single person in this room had a role that they had to fulfill in your own family, right? And that's kind of like that role that you had to fulfill in your family is the vantage point that you kind of carry throughout your life, I think. Like I was the black sheep in my family, so now I'm kind of like the black sheep, and that's part of my identity. And some people will go to therapy and they'll figure out, no, I was actually a scapegoat, different animal. Okay, got it. I wasn't a black sheep, I was a scapegoat. People wanted to put their shit on me. Okay, I'm not gonna let them do that anymore. But then another part of me is like, no, I like being a black sheep. I like being different. I like being weird. That's part of who I am. And those are the people I want to write about because those are my people. Those are the people I can feel attached to and relate to. Okay. So this is a really cool theory to test out whenever you read anything. Like who is the main character in the story? Are they on the fringes of something? Are they weird? Are they different? And is that where the story is coming from? Is that part of the engine that's driving the story? Are they a loser? Would it be interesting for me to write about a loser? I mean, anytime I've tried to write about someone accomplished or like famous, it's been really, really boring. Like why would I write about someone who's like got all their shit figured out and it's cool and fun and whatever. No, I don't want that. I want to write about like homeless kids. I want to write about kids who have boogers on their faces and have to deal with war. I want to write about people. I want to write about people of color. I want to write about people who are disabled. I want to write about people who are living in bodies that don't fit in with what they're supposed to look like. I want to write about people who are funky and struggling with it, but are kind of like, telling a story that maybe isn't the main story that we hear, right? And that's what's interesting, because that's actually what stories are. So what I want to do is I want us to sit down, and you're already sitting, so I'm going to sit, and I want us to do a few exercises. The first thing I want us to do is not necessarily like write out these exercises, but just start coming up with two lists, okay? So try to, if you get excited, try to hold back from continuing and doing an exercise with it. But just do two lists. So just put a line in the middle of your notebook. And on one side, I want you to write about, just do it here too. So you're going to write on the left side 5 occasions during which you've been an outcast in your life, or you've been on the fringes of something, okay? Now think of them as occasions more than moments. So try to have them have a little bit of heft. But if you feel like the moment that you remember is something that you can tap into for a longer piece, then you can go with that too. Okay. And then on the right side, I want you to think about 5 occasions on which you've witnessed an outcast. And you can start at birth with both of these. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be recent. It could be from just go back to the very, very, very beginning. Also on the right side here, where you're doing 5 occasions where you've witnessed an outcast, they cannot be homeless. Okay, it's like the easiest thing to be like, oh, there's this mentally ill homeless person who lives on my, like, walks around my neighborhood. Yeah, I have like 8 of those. So not that. I want you to really reach. job where you work or your family. And then this circle would represent the outsider. It's actually quite simple. Or a band of outsiders. Or maybe an outsider who does really well and can actually fit in both societies. Or someone who's lying. Maybe someone who's closeted, or someone who's trying to hide their disability, or someone who's in some way hiding whatever it is that makes them an outsider and is finding ways to fit in. Those are some examples. Or if you've read Nella Larson, who's someone who's passing in New York in that time. Is everyone pretty much done with their lists? We're gonna do an exercise using these lists in a minute, but I'm curious to see if anyone wants to share times that they've felt outcast or times where they've witnessed someone being an outsider. Yes, go ahead.
I'll do it. The first list was easy. I'm a non-Mormon who grew up in Utah. For a year I lived in, well, sometimes I lived in a small town where my father owned 2 of the 3 bars in town. Mormons don't drink. So yeah, I mean, I felt pretty strange there. People wouldn't bring me home because they didn't want to be seen near the tavern. And actually, it was the same thing in Ogden too. And then I married a Jewish guy and went out to visit his family, and they put a reception on there. And I was really the only person who was not Jewish, so I kind of felt sort of strange there. When I first came to Charleston with my husband, he was a professor here, and I had no job. I was a writer, and I had no children, so I had no identity really. Actually, the last time I went to an AWP conference, I felt like an outsider because, I really had no connections much.
Yeah.
5 situations in which I saw others treated. My mother's always been a loner. That was easy too. And I remember a little kid in kindergarten many years ago. He always had a dirty face, and he always had sweaty hands. He always wanted to hold my hand. For a while, I was a theater department, major in theater at Knox College. Most of those people were outcasts. They were gay or just kind of strange. My sister-in-law is disabled. She has been in a wheelchair since childhood. I had the privilege of watching her at the airport when she was not allowed to board a plane. And I saw the way that she fought to get on that plane. And in the end, she thought she got on and we left, but then the airport, the airline officials called the police to arrest her. She was put off the plane, and then the airline people wouldn't file charges, so my sister-in-law was threatening false arrest. She filed a lawsuit against them. She was disabled, but she always fought and fought and fought.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. It's a lot of material. Good material to mine.
I was the only white person, and I assume the only atheist, at a African-American Christmas play. Very religious play.
Do you want to share something from the other?
A college professor who is very hard on the students, demands a lot, and almost everyone hates him, except for me and a very select few.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mine's actually the exact invert of his. I was like the only black guy in my elementary school. By 5th grade, there was someone who got enrolled as a kindergartner. His name was also Jason. I told him good luck. Other times, well, I'm a loner myself. I don't usually hang around people that often. When I do, it's a very small group. And I don't notice any other people who
friends who would help, just because like it's just really difficult, and you feel like an outcast everywhere you go, and it's so much different than like being in a crowd of college students or whatever. And then I have old people, just because I have a grandma-in-law from North Dakota, and just everywhere she goes, she's on the outside, just watching. So.
That's actually one of the great things about outsiders is that they're so observant.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're outside that circle, they can see the circle.
Yeah.
And the circle is just all people that are looking at each other and not really seeing what they act like or who they are. And so that's what makes for, I think, a good writer and good fiction. It's just having observant characters and you yourself being an observant writer who's always soaking everything in. That's what Henry James says. You know, that's the best advice you can give to a writer is just don't let anything be lost on you. Just soak everything up. Be that kind of person who's just always open and taking in experiences. He talks about, I don't remember who it was, but a writer who saw a group of nuns hanging out in a French hotel room, and she was just passing by the nuns, literally for a split second, and saw them, and then wrote a novel, like an entire 500-page novel, just from seeing these nuns for like a split second. So anything, you know, that you experience can flourish into something massive and beautiful. Yes?
Do most writers get stuff like that? Because I don't.
You don't.
I don't, well, because I also don't observe. I watch a bunch of anime and I kind of get myself in that.
Well, I mean, to me, it's just dangerous to only watch stuff as a writer because we're so immersed in a filmic and television culture that we need to be reading more. So no, you don't actually need to experience, I don't think you need to actually experience the world to write. I mean, Emily Dickinson hung out like in her room and like, when I imagine her going out, I imagine her like doing cartwheels down the hallway to go to the bathroom. She never went, she was a recluse, never went anywhere, just was, and had this amazing inner life. I mean, if anime, if what it is that when you're watching it is it's like making you kind of connect to this like really rich inner life that you have, then that's really what you're tapping into as a writer too. It's like this inner weirdness that you can tap into and write about too. But as long as you're open to it, I think that's the key. It's just opening, keeping yourself open to your, like all those sparks that are going on inside you.
Also, I don't like reading.
That sucks. You need to start getting reading.
I do.
It's almost like
It's possible not to read.
I tell, because my son really wants to be a writer, but he hates reading. And so I just tell him, like, please don't write, because, or just start reading, because it's just like having a car and like being like, I like having a car, but like, I don't like to like go to the gas station. I'm never gonna go to the gas station. And no, it's not an electric car. It's like a car that runs on gas. No, you need to actually like go to the gas station if you want to.
Well, I also play a bunch of RPG games. I take all the alternatives, and I do listen to the video game RPG. They have good stories. Don't lie at me.
Yeah.
You try for yourself.
I'm not. No. I've played tons of video games. But let's open it up to other folks here. I saw a couple of hands up in this area, but I don't know. Oh, it's actually that area. You had your hand up first. Yes.
Okay. So me as an outcast, I grew up basically with a family full of mental illness. And I say family loosely because they weren't necessarily blood related, because half the time I was in a nursing home with my family.
there's this guy that walks in front of my parents' house. Always has like cut off jean shorts, always looks like he's got a place to be. I don't know, that was the first thing that popped in my head when I thought of
Yeah,
this, so.
that's a great character.
Nice to be.
Yes.
My parents got divorced when I was like 2 years old, so like growing up and like hanging out with all my friends and like I had my parents together and stuff. And this is also kind of myself and witnessed. Me and my brother, like we kind of just noticed how like dad acts differently around his other kids than we do. And even just like the little things like watching him like he goes to like all the like baseball games and stuff like that. That just kind of sucks.
I wonder if I were to write a short story, I would be interested in how they see you guys too. That way you can talk about yourselves through your other siblings, you know?
And then like another one was just because me and my aunt, uncle, and my 3 cousins, like we're all really, really close. Because me and my cousin Gwen, she was the youngest, and then my brother and the oldest of the cousins, Justin, they would always hang out with the older guys, and then the one who was always like, in the middle, and it was either hang out with the guys, even though she was a girl, or hang out with the like the young kids. So she didn't do either or, so she would like hang out with like my mom
Right.
and all the adults and stuff like that. So like she wasn't like with us. Yeah.
That would be a really cool character to write about. Yes.
Okay, well, specific occasions, I have a son with autism, and he, almost every time we went out, when I just got too crazy being in the house, we had to go out, he'd have a tantrum, and a lot of times it involved like other people's kids. And you're immediately an outcast there. And then I had another son who thought he'd be cute and burn a flag on the courthouse lawn. A conservative community, and she was sort of outcast there. And then, yeah, and back in junior high, I have this vivid memory of a girl who was actually, you know, kind of smelly and everything, but the gym teacher publicly bathed her. She got her down, wrestled her down in front of everyone, gave her a bath. And that was pretty intense.
You have to write a short story.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
it's amazing. Yes.
I was the only white sheep in a family of black sheep.
That's tough. My brother's the white sheep. He's just like, has a job and lives in New Jersey. And
First person in my family to read a book. When I was younger, I volunteered to teach English to immigrant students from the Cardinal Rule. We were the same age, so it doesn't matter. And dated one of my students and had to sit through many, many, many dinners with her Polish family as they would talk back and forth in Polish and sometimes Russian and all kinds of fun stuff there. Go to the anime conventions with my daughters, which I don't recommend for anybody. Only white boy and African American this has been done. As far as occasions where witnessing outcast, I know someone who's had to travel to Russia to get AIDS medication that is not available in the United States. It didn't work. I'm an alcoholic with handlebar mustache that was released from a job. It's teaching safety in the steel mill.
I feel like I want that character to hang out with the character with the cutoff shorts. And I want you to write about just like a day in their lives. Maybe they could go to Russia together. That would be amazing. Yes.
For being an outcast, I have a really strong passion for professional wrestling, and it's really hard to have a conversation like
movies, UFC, and I'm like whispering down there, WWE, whatever. Like when I first started watching when I was younger, like I got the idea like, oh, it's two guys beating each other up. And then when I got older, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it, it's entertainment. Like I always liked the like, when I got older, like to me it was like overcome adversity, follow your dreams, like a little guy beating a big guy. So whenever I like flip through excuse me, whenever I flip through TV, like yeah, I watch TV with friends. I don't know, it's pretty awkward just saying like what everyone wants to watch, and I'll say wrestling, they'll be like, oh, it's fake, you know, it's scripted. So I always be sarcastic and answer back. Thanks for finally telling me. So tell me more about the reality TV you watch.
Have you seen The Wrestler, that movie The Wrestler?
Yeah.
That was a really cool way to take a character who had been successful and that was now like an outsider in his family and his town and his job and
Yeah, that's pretty much
like all these amazing scenes where he's like working at the Dell counter.
Yeah.
That's great. That's like an example of taking a character who's an outsider and putting them to work, and seeing what happens. Anything else before we move on to the next part of it? Yes.
I couldn't help thinking when you were doing the housing thing. Mine's a little bit different. I was never homeless. I was a true nomad. I always lived in houses for very short periods of time, moved around the country, so home is really a sort of an alien concept to me. People who talk about homes and living in houses and living in places for any length of time has always been an issue for me.
I think that makes your past rife with stories and interesting anecdotes and things that you could bring to your fiction. Well, what I want to do now is I want you to choose one of the examples from the left and one of the examples from the right. And I want you to write two different scenes, but I want them both to be in the first person. So I want them both to be from the point of view of the speaker. And what this is going to do is going to sort of force you to be in the position of the outsider that you observed. And when you go home, I encourage you to sort of take that second. I found like the times that you guys talked about the first, the people that you observed. I found a lot of your examples amazing and thrilling. So I definitely encourage you to like go home and try to construct scenes and stories about those people that you have observed and fictionalize them. So when I say please write a scene from your, your point of view, and then a scene from your point of view as well, but in the voice of an outsider, I mean something that includes dialogue, something that includes setting, something that includes description, something that includes an event that is pushing the character a little bit forward. So even though it can be just like half a page or 1 page, I want you to try to include as many of those craft elements as you can into your scene. Does that make sense? anyone get to do, the second exercise, or did you just have to do the same? You got to do the second one? You got to do the first one?
I did the second one.
You did the second one?
A little bit.
Do you mind reading?
Sure, I think the concept of it's more interesting than what I wrote, but I skated on synchronized skating teams as a child, and there were about 18 girls in the team, and there were always a few that served as alternates, and those girls didn't skate in competitions unless somebody got injured or sick, and they were usually weaker skaters. This was about one girl that was on my team when I was in high school. The other girls in the team wear short black lycra skirts and tights that cover the top of their boots. They wear cropped hair back in barrettes. They toss their guards into a stack and step on the ice without looking down to see their blades meet the ice. They show each other new tricks. They do headless spins and absurd dances on their picks. They have jokes they learned on the ice at 2 years old. They take a few laughs and swat at each other's ears and don't imagine they might fall. I want to ask them to teach me last week's steps, but no one wants a big girl on the team. A girl who's only skated 2.5 years. A girl whose dress is too long, whose long braid ends in split ends, who's afraid to come to a stop without holding the wall.
I hope you keep working on it. Yes.
This was after my parents got divorced, and then he was living next with his mom immediately. I look at my clock and realize what time it is. It's 10 a.m. and my grandma's making her delicious pancakes. My brother helps me put the pull-out couch back to normal while I put the cushions on. We walk upstairs, and our dad is reading the newspaper. He doesn't say morning, nor does he smile. We give our grandma a kiss on the cheek and say morning. Even though it's great food, I don't like this lifestyle. To me, it's not normal. This would go on for a few years until my dad finds himself happy with another woman. He's now laughing and seems better. The only conversations we have on the phone to this day is how's school, how's work, what's new. Maybe if I ever get married, I can understand my father and how he acted. Until then, I'll remain disappointed.
It's good to tap into the raw stuff.
I saw a man punch a woman in the face in a bar one time, so this is very from his perspective. Linda has always been a bitch. I knew that going in, but I thought I'd be the one to change her. I'd be the guy she stayed faithful to. We were friends first, and I figured things would go a lot more smoothly with me as opposed to the other guys I'd heard about in so much detail. Well, that's what I thought, but I was wrong. We were out for a drink, and she just casually mentioned she'd slept with my brother the previous night. My fist shot out immediately and got her in the face. I can't say it was a good idea, especially in such a small space. When she went down, there was a small, electric moment of silence, and then every guy in the place glommed onto me. Several of them were taking turns to punch me in the face in my turn. Linda got some concerned arms thrown around her, tottered off, straight into some poor sucker's heart.
Yeah, I would have never thought to, it seems like the abuser.
I know, I'm kind of freaked out that I wrote that.
No, I think it's like the kind of thing that Mary Gateskill would do, is like talk about, you know, like the actual abuser as a marginalized person. Yeah, I think it's tough. It's really tough. Anyone else? Probably have room for a couple more. You'd like to talk about that?
This is a kid I worked with when he was 13, and huge kid. He looked like a really big man, and he was mentally retarded and somewhat bipolar, a little out of control sometimes. And so this is writing about an interview we had, trying to write from his point of view. And I'm trying a little bit to get some of his language, and I think it's gonna come out a little funny, so. They shot Sue. I tell her so she know. The lady let me have a pen and some paper, so I was drawing them with their guns and the blue hats and the shiny badges. Badges is cool to draw. My trying to talk to me about something, but mainly she watched me draw. I think maybe she about to cry. She fat like mama, but real pale white, but I don't think she mad at me. Most white people mad at me, or my dog. Mostly mama mad too, at them.
It's always cool to find a voice like that. Did you want to, since you had your hand up first, did you want to read a little bit?
Sure. This is the little boy with the dirty face and sweaty hands. I wait on the school steps until Penny comes outside. She's pretty in her pigtails and pink dress with bows on the shoulder. She sees me and kind of steps back like she wants to turn around and go inside again. But she steps down to where I am. I wish she would smile. I hold out my hand. Penny looks at it before reaching to me and taking it. It feels dry and cool against mine, so nice, but I know she wants to take it back. She looks past me down the long sidewalk to the street. Her grandmother's car pulls to the curb. Other kids take the bus, but her grandmother drops her off and picks her up every school day. Penny lets me hold her hand as we walk down the sidewalk to the car. Her grandmother gets out and walks around the hood and scowls down at me. "Hello, Carrie." I mumble hi. "Tell your mother to wash her face." Penny gives me a sideway look and smiles, so I know she feels sorry for me. I drop her hand and turn away.
It's really poignant. Thank you for sharing. Thank you guys so much for sharing and for coming to this workshop, and I hope you'll take some of